Welcome everyone to the Cardano Effect Podcast, episode 18. The purpose of this podcast is to take high-level developer information and projects that are occurring within the Cardano space and break them down into bite-sized, consumable pieces of information for everyday use. I'm your host, Philippe, and let's get this podcast started. I wanted to thank everyone for the support, Reddit, the Cardano Effect at gmail.com, Twitter, YouTube. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And don't forget to hit the subscribe link. We get a lot of viewers each video, and we want to match the number of viewership to the actual subscribers on our channel. It really helps to promote the podcast and get the podcast out to people who are interested in learning more about the Cardano project or interested in learning more about blockchain and cryptocurrency in general. So I wanted to thank that. The previous episode, we had Florian, and he was the Chief Marketing Officer at Emergo. So if you want to check out that last episode, it's the latest episode on our channel. And today we're doing things a little bit differently. We have a little special surprise. Unfortunately, we do not have Sebastian today. He is in Japan at the Japan Blockchain Conference. So you can see everything that's going on Twitter. Emergo is keeping us up to date with what's going on. But some of the things that have been happening within the Cardano sphere, the Yoroi Android app just released. I did a video on my YouTube channel about it, so you can go ahead and download it. It's very clean, very responsive. When you're sending ADA from Daedalus to Yoroi or whatever from an exchange to Yoroi, it takes seconds, and it's very clean, very responsive. iOS is coming out soon, so that's something to look forward to. That's the Android app. So I want to preface this video by saying that none of what we say is financial advice or should be taken as such. We are not your financial advisors, and if you don't think that you are your own best financial advisor, you need to find someone who's qualified to do so. We're just a few guys who like to talk about things Cardano related. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic over to Rick. Rick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Philippe. Thank you for asking, and thanks for putting out the latest news on Yoroi. I'm also going to put a shout out for the Ambassador Program, which was just released. And the Ambassador Program recognizes people who are meetup organizers, moderators, content creators, and translators. So if you would like to be on the Ambassador Program, it's a good idea to contact Maki Mukai and Tom Kelly at IOHK and find out what type of efforts they need done. So congratulations to the following people, and thank you for your very hard work. The list of ambassadors is Toshiaki Mayataki, Barry Ram, Joshua Akpin, sorry if I mess up your name, Wang Jiang Li, Cliff Choi, Javier Trujillo, Tim Wolteput, Neil Schuf, Insun Yang, Vincent Brugg, Silvio Tenace, Mihori, Josh Davio, Andy Hendricks, Michael Antwi, Paul Coe, Sean Alamoff, Priyank, Marcus Guffmer, Robert Karnacki, Below Searcher, Lark Davis, Philippe and myself, Ada Fan, Tyrone Barry, Rex Liu, Chia Lun Han, Hao Sun, Christian Meng, Malik Mbengi, and Carlos Gomes. Thank you all very much for all the hard work. We very much appreciate it. Now today we have special guests from LiqEase and the Traxia ecosystem. We have Mr. Tobias Pfütze. Tobias studied business administration in Germany and China, and soon after he graduated, he started his first fintech company in the field of mobile payments. And I'll let him introduce what Traxia and LiqEase is here in just a moment. We also have Bruno Botelho, and Bruno holds a master's degree in business administration and management from Nova Business School in Lisbon. And Bruno started his international career in a publicly listed industrial group where he held the positions of financial controller, finance director, and supply chain director. Now, notice that the folks we have on today, these are business people. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Tobias and Bruno. Gentlemen, how are you doing today, and where are you calling in from?
Hi, Rick. Hi, Philippe. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. I'm currently connecting from Berlin, Germany, but I'm based in Shanghai, China.
And what have you guys been doing out there lately? What are you doing in Europe?
So last week, we attended Supply Chain Finance Summit in Amsterdam, which was a very laser-focused conference, about 300 people, mainly bankers, asset managers, treasury managers, some regulators, to discuss what are the trends, what are the latest concerns and news about supply chain finance, how can we improve. And then the week after, so this week, we were in Paris for the Paris FinTech Forum, which is a much bigger conference, about 2,600 people, a lot of high level. So I can tell you the Christine Lagarde was one of the keynotes, and the same. I mean, knowing what is going out there, also seeing some familiar faces. We had a booth on the last day, so we were able to meet new people. It was quite interesting. So since we are here in Europe, we will stay for a few more meetings and then go back to China.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Bruno. And so for our viewers, what we like to do is start with kind of like the big picture, the big story, to simplify and introduce them to this area that you guys are working in. And you have LiqEase is the company, and then Traxia is the system. Can you please tell us more about that?
Sure. It is important that we start with the why, and why we created this. There is a big problem that most people are not aware in the world, that is called the trade finance gap. It's $1.7 trillion, and is been growing. And this problem, what it means is that companies, they try to get financing from banks to grow their businesses, to keep their jobs, to pay their rents, but banks are not helping much. There are studies who say that because they can't, the others that because they are not really willing or interested. There's just not the right incentive in terms of risk and reward. But it is a problem that affects a lot of people in many countries, and especially countries that are in Southeast Asia, and obviously not the ones that have the biggest infrastructure. Just to put you some numbers into this, 75% of this 1.7 trillion US dollars gap comes from the SMEs. So 50% of the requests are rejected by the banks. You have a number as well. So this is all numbers by World Trade Organization, IMF. You have all the global agencies are tracking this and saying that the banks are not doing enough. So this is not created by by individuals. And if we are able to solve this problem, or at least contribute to solve it, this can add by 2025 $2.4 trillion of growth into the world economy. This is obviously very, very important. Their cash flow or working capital, better put, working capital is the #1 reason that is killing businesses around the world. Very often is because lack of access. So these are businesses who do not have that many assets in their balance sheet to prove banks or even history. But there's nothing wrong that the company that was just created 6 months ago already have 2 or 3 contracts with the clients who want to pay for it, cannot go to the bank and say, I need your help because I need to buy my raw materials. I need to buy an equipment to provide to this client. Therefore, there has to be another way. And this is the reason why we created Traxia, to give access, to improve, to create more visibility to the problem, and to bring technology. Technology for sure will help to bring more clarity, to bring more transparency, to bring more an easier way and a faster way to onboard new companies. So when we look at KYC, AML, banks are still doing it in a paper-based way, and it takes quite a few days or weeks, depending on the countries. Therefore, we think that this problem could be solved through a full ecosystem. And Traxia is basically providing the way to this ecosystem to exist and to be we'd add more players, add more, and we are not against the banks. I mean, I think banks can definitely participate in this ecosystem with the things that they are best, which are giving funds. Maybe they can leave the onboarding or the or settlement or new technologies or the use of our mobile phone to fintechs. Maybe the regulators will look at this and think nothing scary. These are new companies who are bringing new technology, and therefore let's work with them as well. And as well as big international funds, they are happy to see the deals and to see the exact people who need it, instead of being just seeing the problem through the eyes of the bank, because up until now only the banks have that visibility of the people who go there and ask for credit. So Traxia Foundation is the idea is to transform a global trade by facilitating access to finance to companies worldwide. So just not just in the underbank or not just in Asia, but a little bit for everyone.
Wow, thank you, Bruno. It sounds like you guys are blazing the trail here with putting blockchain into fintech. And Tobias, being the CEO, would you like to chime in here and tell us, how do you manage this? How do you lead the process of blazing the future?
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Rick, Philippe, and I think a great introduction by Bruno about the why we're doing what we are doing. I think important to mention Traxia because I saw one of the questions was about runway. Traxia is a foundation, so foundations in Switzerland are always non-for-profit. They have a cause which is improving access to finance for small medium enterprises or corporates globally in our case. And the project that we are supporting as a foundation is LiqEase. Yeah, good question, how to manage that. Obviously, we all saw a lot of ups and downs in the markets last year. We have now geopolitically also a couple of tensions. But the good thing is people and companies always engage in trade, domestically or internationally. And as Bruno mentioned, the gap of finance to support such domestic or global trade is still lacking. And so even all those challenges like outside of the company, and obviously inside of the company, you have some ups and downs as well. You need to manage expectations within the company, within the community, and obviously since it's a fintech, you deal with regulations. So a lot of challenges, but the why and wanting to solve, the whole team wanting to solve this access to finance issue keeps us going, and that's basically a common way and common vision. I think that keeps the company moving forward.
That was a great response. Thank you, Tobias. So I wanted to ask a separate question. So everyone is familiar, or what a lot of people are familiar with ERC20 tokens, and they're familiar with the whole process of different companies existing within the Ethereum blockchain. And one of the biggest concerns in 2018 was the utility. Why blockchain? Why a token? Can you answer this for Traxia? Why is it necessary to be on the blockchain? Why is it necessary to have a token? What purpose does that token serve within your ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. We often discuss that is a token really necessary, right? Do you really need a closed loop system if you start a new club, right? A golf club or some other club, when only members can basically purchase the card in the beginning and then make use of this club going forward. Fair point. Is open, yeah, and have a member per member, but somehow you need to finance the club, and in our case, the club is focusing on improving access to finance for SMEs, and to get to a certain point, you need a need a token, or we use the token as an analogy to a club membership card to pre-finance, get to this point, and then obviously solve this issue. And the advantages of such a utility token are obviously that the technology is just more modern than having a plastic card in your wallet, right? Why would you have a plastic card if you can improve it or just leapfrog the whole thing and put it into the 21st century? So that being said, for the Traxia token, but we are not. I'm not sure if I should say that here, but we always say we are not blockchain maximalists. Yeah, so we really believe in our use case. The technology adds a lot of value, and that being standardizing payment obligations or invoices, and the advantages of having immutable records are that you can prevent fraud, double financing, potentially money laundering if the KYC issue is solved, and the like. And going forward, actually, if you have such as we do, we have a securitization vehicle issuing notes. Notes are comparable to bonds and stocks, and as we all know, Australian Stock Exchange and others are already trying and testing out blockchain for the purpose of settling and trading bonds and stocks and notes. And why do they do that? Because you improve the settlement efficiency. Currently, when you use Euroclear or the like, it's settled in 2 to 3 days. That is a very easy to beat benchmark using blockchain technology. And it's not only the time gain, but normally in the financial system, you have custodian banks safekeeping those assets in that sense of paper. Yeah? If you really represent assets digitally and trustworthy, which is possible by using blockchain technology, obviously you create cost efficiencies because there's no need for a custodian bank in the middle anymore, so can cut out intermediaries. So that was the long answer of why we are still very excited of the potentials that blockchain can bring to the ecosystem.
I would like to add, echo of course what Tobias said, and add one thing that is important for people to understand. A commodity, an invoice is a commodity, and the best way to trade commodities, to move commodities, to give access to commodities is by the use of a platform, the platform model, and you see that with all the, of course, cases of all the other platforms that you know. Now, when we run a platform, when it's an asset-light platform, meaning that we do not borrow against our own balance sheet. We use the investors' money to borrow. So we have to be very, very focused on transparency, accountability, and traceability. Now, as you all know, blockchain is the right technology to allow this. Right? When you have timestamp, when you have immutability of what was written on the blockchain, this provides the trust to the investors that maybe they still are not very conscious or not very aware of this problem, but sooner or later they will be, and or we believe they will be. And if you think that we do not have a big balance sheet, we do not have assets as a company, as a platform, the only thing that we really have as an asset is our the reputation, right? So we need to be very, very careful to make sure that we have the necessary tools to grow that reputation. And therefore, I see that blockchain is a perfect, let's say, sugar to coat the cake, to bring that extra layer of reputation that we need.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Bruno and Tobias. I appreciate that. And I was going to ask another question. Actually, I wanted to clarify for the viewers and for myself. On this program, we'd like to simplify to make sure that all the viewers, and especially the new viewers, understand what we're talking about here. And with Traxia, because what we're used to as a commodity, me as a consumer or a customer, I'm used to dealing with commodities such as clothes, food, furniture, electronic products, stuff like that. And deal with that as a commodity and trade. But what we're talking about here with Traxia is the commodity is the invoice, and the customers are these professional investors. For example, I am not a customer of the Traxia system. I might be a speculator. I can purchase tokens and hope that the price goes up. But the actual users and customers are people who are investors, buyers, sellers. That's the basic idea. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Isn't that the idea of what Traxia is?
Yes, I think to make it very simple, yes, this is the ecosystem, and that's the idea. I'm using blockchain to solve the access to finance issue that is currently yeah, existing across the globe, and therefore we set up the foundation. We did a token generating event to support that cause, which is Traxia, and build out this ecosystem. And the first project that was supported by the foundation was LiqEase, which is limited in Hong Kong. And basically, to put it in very simple terms, and this limited is the operational entity. It created something that is called a securitization vehicle, which basically buys assets. Yeah, in our case, or commodities. In our case, that is the payment obligation. Yeah, which is the invoice. And why we buy that? Why? Because you, as a small medium enterprise, don't want to wait 90, 120, or maybe sometimes even 260 days or a year to be paid, right? So we buy those commodities, invoices from you at a discount, and our institutional investors invest in the notes that are issued by the securitization vehicle, and obviously make a return on invest, right? And in the middle of a facilitating and not only building actually a technology product, but also a financial product that requires some knowledge and expertise, and that's where we come in, and that's where we charge our fees.
Thank you for that response. I wanted to try to break it down in a visual example because I'm a visual learner. I want to try to understand this from the bottom up. So Bruno was saying earlier that Traxia is going after the SMEs. And if people are not familiar with what SMEs are, they're small and medium-sized enterprises or businesses. I run a small business. I do government contracting work. In the US, there was a government shutdown for the past, 34 days. So work that I did last year at the end of December, I haven't gotten paid for that yet. So I have an invoice out to the government, and that invoice, it's basically the work that I did from the end of November to pretty much when the shutdown happened at the end of December. And there was a 34-day shutdown, so I just submitted the invoice. It's been pending for a while. And the government, the organization that I work with, they have approved that invoice, and now I have to wait for payment settlement. So it's going to take, another 1-2 weeks. But the time where I completed the work and the time where I'm getting paid, there's a huge gap. And I'm unable to provide that liquidity because I have to incur certain expenses for that contract during that period of time. And basically, my account is deducting. And during that time where I'm waiting for payment, I am unsure of, there's no money left. So you have to tie up the funds in a certain contract and then wait until you get paid. From what I'm understanding, I could take that invoice and upload it to Traxia or using the LiqEase platform, and buyers, so let's say hypothetically that Rick owns the Traxia token, buyers would be pre-funding that invoice or pre-funding that whatever contract or invoice that I put on the platform. I would be able to get pre-funded and allow my business to increase its liquidity until the time that I actually get paid. Is that correct? Or
so as a buyer of the TMT, those TMT can and will never be used to purchase invoices. So the TMT and the utility of the TMT is to access the Traxia ecosystem, which is where a financial and technology product is built by LiqEase. And so similar to the Binance coin for settling fees for the exchange, the TMTs are used for settling fees within the Traxia ecosystem, same as Ripple does for their suites of product.
That sounds good. That sounds good. And also, you mentioned that $1.7 trillion. Is that accounts receivable or is that accounts payable? What are you going after? Just accounts receivable? What exactly does that $1.7 trillion of outstanding money really represent?
The 1.7 trillion is a figure from the Asian Development Bank, and that includes the total credit gap globally. So that includes all types of credit and loans in the SME or broader sector of.
But Philip, to give you another number, which I think it's important to tell the audience, there are 43 trillion US dollars worth of invoices pending in companies' balance sheets. So these are invoices. This is money that is basically locked, literally locked in the first drawer of the companies, and this is an opportunity for us and for the market, which means that we need to unlock that working capital, not just for the companies who cannot get access, but also for the companies who maybe are doing a worse deal by getting a credit line from their bank, and maybe are not going after the new clients because they do not have the necessary capacity to invest in inventory. So the picture is much broader than just the gap. The gap is the urgent thing to fix.
I understand, and I totally, I put myself in that situation as well. I mean, I've been in business for almost 8 years, and in order to get funding, you have to go get a credit line, and a line of credit is not the easiest thing to get. You have to have a certain history with the bank. You have to have certain rapport. You have to produce certain documents, and they always underfund your credit line. So you're always using banks against each other in order to increase your leverage and increase your liquidity. But it doesn't always often work. And it's that whole idea of, when you first get a credit card, whether that's outside of college, and they're like, oh, in order to have credit, you need to build up credit. But how do I build up my credit if I haven't been building up my credit already? Or how do I start? And I think that there are a lot of companies, small, medium, and large enterprises that struggle with this issue, this liquidity issue. And I think that this is a very pertinent use case to increase the liquidity. All that money that you see tied up, it could be used for other things, increasing products, increasing the amount of services that you're providing, and ultimately making the economy, the global economy, more liquid. Rick, I don't know if you wanted to move into the Reddit questions, because we have quite a few Reddit questions, and we're edging towards the latter half of our interview. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I think it is time for that. But along with the last point you had just made about getting credit, there is one other thing that is not in the Reddit questions I wanted to bring up, and that is LiqEase is going to be dealing with probably millions and millions of dollars worth of invoices, and there's some risk involved there. So can you tell us a little bit about what kind of risks are involved in your business, and how do you manage those risks? Is there a risk that someone won't pay up? Is there how does that look from your perspective?
Yes, certainly you have credit risk, reputation risk. You can mitigate that through credit insurers. You have, for example, Euler Hermes out there, Coface, and others, or export credit agencies. In the US, you have Exim Bank. In Europe, you have a couple of local ones, such as BPI France, which we just met here during the Paris FinTech Forum. But in essence, most of the small medium enterprises, or as Philippe just mentioned, work for governments or big multinationals. So it's basically credit arbitrage. So you use the credit rating of the government or of the big multinational company, and that is the risk for the investor. and depending on that rating, or how likely you as a professional investor think the government or the multinational company is going to default, that's basically covering the pricing, right? So it's always a bit what we do is between risk and pricing that risk, and the more efficient we can make that. Blockchain is a great tool because transparency, immutable records, and tradable 24/7. I think that that can help to improve that pricing of different risks.
All right, thank you, Tobias. And Philippe, did you want to lead off with Reddit questions? Or you want me to go ahead and start?
You can go ahead and start. That's fine.
All right. I would like to thank our Reddit users for asking very well composed and polite questions. We found that it's you can have a really good conversation, and you can talk about critical issues, and you can talk about controversial issues in a polite manner. And thank you so much for composing your questions well and asking the tough questions, and at the same time being polite about it. So thank you for that. Our first question comes from Reddit user Reagan Dunnigan, and Reagan asks, with smart contracts not coming to Cardano until late Q2 or Q3 of this year, 2019, how much runway does LiqEase and Traxia have? And also, what clients have you boarded since your ICO? But the first question there is, how much runway does LiqEase and Traxia have with the transition to Cardano?
Not sure if that is meant in terms of a timeline or cash in. If it's meant in terms of timeline, it's obviously twofold, right? We're working on it, Cardano is working on it, and we integrate whenever we can, as soon as possible, obviously, but it's still a tech project, and there are risks involved here as well. If it's meant for cash, foundations don't have a runway. They are incorporated for a broader good, so they are not profit making. LiqEase is obviously a private company that is able to also raise other means of funding apart from the foundation. There's the traditional equity road here, which we are always elaborating. So for now, we are still well equipped.
What clients have you onboarded since your ICO? Thank you, Philippe.
Also good question. So we started last year with the assumption that everything is easy and we can rule the world by the end of 2018, and then the reality kicked in, and we realized that every region where we operate is different in terms of regulation. So for us, it's very important that we have a clear framework and approval from the local regulators that what we do is unregulated, which is the case, for example, in Hong Kong and Luxembourg, and that is where we are going to onboard our first clients. What we onboarded already last year were a couple of partners, which we also communicated through different AMA sessions, or actually also during the token sale, that are credit checks. Credit Safe is a partner of ours, and Synopsis for the KYC. These are all, like, let's say, base and groundwork for actually being revenue making, which we intend to be in 2019.
I would also like to add one thing to Philip's question and the example that he gave before, as him being I imagine an SME that needs funding, and he can submit his invoice. There are many platforms doing the same thing, and in US. So if you are from US, you know Cabbage for sure, right? So there are already many alternative ways to get financing. Now the problem is that if you try to get one-on-one, so meaning like go after one SME each time and having them discount their invoice with the platform, you actually will have a very slow growth rate. So that is not very, we don't see that that is the best strategy to go, because as you know, or as people can read, we are focused on the cross-border deals between China and Europe and US, which means that these are containers, right? It's and therefore the tickets are quite higher and we should go for through partnerships, reach out to bigger groups, and therefore a bigger group, meaning a bigger group of companies, requires a few integrations with their systems that they have, and therefore it is more important for us to be able to catch one of those and be able to work with them, and by working with them, being able to serve a lot of SMEs at one time, than to capture one client here, one client there, and in the end, yes, you will have invoices being discounted, but at the same time, you will not have the same opportunities because you are, let's say, busy trying to solve those onboardings and those small details.
I understand. So you're going after the bulk rather than going onboarding client by client by client, because there's only so much you can do in that respects. That makes sense. That makes sense. Rick, let's move on to the second question.
Sure. I'm going to roll through these rather quickly, but I'm sure we'll get some great answers on this. And again, it comes from Reddit user Malvaison. And the person asks, how's the platform benefiting from being built on a permissionless blockchain? How is it an improvement on a permission equivalent? And I think what they're asking here, now for the viewers, there's two separate software systems here. There is the blockchain system, which includes either Daedalus or the Ethereum system, the Cardano system or the Ethereum system. And then there is the actual SAP type software platform that is used to conduct the invoicing, the transactions, and the KYC process. So in this case, they're asking, how are we benefiting from the permissionless blockchain side? So guys, what do you think?
So like, obviously we could use a permission or non-permission entity, right? The idea here is that being centralized can give you a few examples. Being centralized can be advantages to you, but at the same time, we think that interoperability is important. Therefore, we see that companies are playing and banks are playing with Corda. Others are using Hyperledger. Others might be doing other things, and it is important to have a system, more than the discussion of being centralized or decentral. I mean, being permissional or not. It is important to understand what kind of connections can you have with other blockchains. That is definitely more important.
Yes, and I think there needs to be also a bit more awareness on the benefits and for the broader good. And since we are talking here about financial products, it is not for the benefit of the greater good to have it completely permissionless. Why? Because you can create very, very complex and ununderstandable financial products that are not designed for the broader public. So having a permission is not always a bad thing, and so I think that needs to be. So it really depends on the use case. Obviously, it's great to be permissionless for, let's say, verifying the invoice. Yeah, so everybody should be able to do that. Everybody should be able to, or without any needs for permission, to verify, is there fraud going on? Is there double financing happen? That are, let's say, easy examples, and where permissionless makes sense. But for sure, if you talk about financial products and access to those, a permission is required by law.
Okay. That's great to hear. Great to hear. I think that was a great response. I would like to ask a quick follow-up question, because you mentioned Corda and you mentioned Hyperledger, and earlier you mentioned Ripple, XRP, and it seems like all of you are going after similar markets. I mean, you mentioned cross-border payments. What does your field of competition look like, and do you feel squeezed by other companies, or are you in direct competition, or are you in a league of your own?
king, yeah. But the good thing is that this asset class of or this special type of loan, which is trade related loans, as a subsegment of loans, is growing by 20 to 25% year over year, which is just a massive market. So there is a need for better technology or for better solutions to actually attract and make sure that this growth is met. And so I think that is a bit unique to all the other players that I mentioned before. And payments is just like a support function for what we do, which is essentially buying and selling account receivables, securitizing those account receivables. So it's much more about a different system of access to capital rather than payments. But in general, I think if you want to have a competitor analysis, you have some other players using blockchain. I think sometimes they might have regulatory issues because actually their token, which they sold to the public, they can be used to purchase invoices, which again might have regulatory implications that are not favorable. And that's why we are not doing it. So it depends on who you compare us with. If it's really just like the new tech platforms or the traditional incumbents such as banks, I would say we are a bit in a niche between. And giving our strong Asian footprint, we feel comfortable that this is also a USP. And there's again a credit rate arbitrage between a low interest rate environment such as Europe and the US, or China on the other hand, where you have 5-6% versus 0 or 2 to around 2 in the US.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna move on to the next Reddit question. It says from RJM Coin, have you had special access or insight into the development of Plutus and Marlowe, and have you been building your services on those platforms?
I can answer that. So these two languages or these ways to create smart contracts, they're actually open to the community. There are no VIP tickets. So we have been participating in the community. Our developers are looking into both. From what I've been told, Plutus using Ascal, it is a little bit harder to use by developers. Therefore, KeyDM seems to be easier, but we are still studying all the alternatives, and also there will be time differences between one is released versus the other, and we need to match that with our roadmap, meaning that we need to understand if we really need to wait 2 months or 3 months. I honestly don't know what is going to be the timeline difference. But it's answering your question is no, we do not have any special treatment versus the other developers of the community.
All right, guys, so we're going to continue on. And there was a question from What is Cardano is the username. And their question is there a scenario where Traxia could be used as a means of funding Cardano improvement proposal projects? That's a really good question. Thank you for that. And the answer to that is no. That is not the purpose of Traxia. Traxia is used for invoice and financing, but it's not used for funding other Cardano-related stuff. ADA would most likely be the currency used for those projects. So we're going to move to the next question from Malvezan. Malvezan asked several questions. Thank you for that. Malvezan asks, what are the competitive advantages of Traxia? Is there any network effect? So is there a competitive advantage to Traxia, and what is it?
I think that really depends on the technology and the advancements and how it is adapted on a broader scale. So of course, as soon as you have standards for representing invoices on a blockchain and tokenizing those invoices, then you will enter into network effects. But that is probably still a long way into the future. So until that point, there are no real network effects, but the competitive advantages, I think we mentioned briefly. You need not only a tech product, but a financial product that is accepted by professional institutional investors globally, which we have with the securitization vehicle in Luxembourg, and then our strong footprint in Asia, where you have more demand for competitive financing because of the different China versus Euro versus the US, and a lot of export coming or import going back and forth.
The next question is by Mauvaison again, and it's will the smart contracts be rewritten in Plutus? And I think this was answered before. You're still exploring your options. You're looking at KEVM, and like you were saying, Plutus is Haskell based, and it may take a little bit higher barrier to entry to train the developers to code in using Haskell. But there's also Marlowe, but that hasn't been verified yet of what you're going to do in the future. So, Rick, do you want to move on to the next question?
Yeah, I'll go through. The next one is from BK Hopper 1980. This one has already been answered too. Was that does LiqEase have any small businesses that are interested in Traxia? And Bruno and Tobias have commented on that earlier about they're working with between Luxembourg. And the following question comes from Brinker59. Brinker59 asks, how close do you guys work with IOHK? I've never heard a single mention about LiqEase and Traxia by Charles. People kind of use Charles as the benchmark. And not that it can make any difference for your business. However, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, well-known, respected player in the area, can obviously open some doors and bring attention to your business. So the question there is really, how close do you work with IOHK?
Well, I think the simple answer is understanding what IOHK is, what is the purpose that they serve, and what is Emorgo. As the community knows, and it's publicly announced by them, Emorgo invested in LiqEase, actually, because it is a company, or is a project that comes to solve a big problem worldwide, and it's scalable. It is a real economy problem. And I don't see, I mean, I met with Charles, but we actually pitched one after the other in one event in Seoul. So obviously he's aware, but I don't see the connection between what he's doing or what AOHK is doing and what we are doing. And so it is, for me, perfectly normal that he's not out there speaking and selling the Traxia project.
Right. That's what you guys do, is you describe it to your customers. So let's see here. We have. Are we good with that with Philippe? We're going to go through a speed round for the questions.
Sorry. Tobias, do you want to take an answer at that?
No, I think you answered it perfectly fine, and I also remember when we met with IOHK and Charles during different events, and obviously also looking at Emorgo going forward. There is no upside for Charles like supporting all the projects that Emorgo invests in, right? So Emorgo is focusing on building the ecosystem, investing in companies such as ourselves. And Charles with IOHK is much more focused on building up the whole rails behind it, and I think that this is understandable. So I don't see. I understand the question, but I think there's also the community needs to understand also, or we need to understand that there is a limit of what Charles can do for all of those projects.
Yes. I agree, and I think that's a great response. Like we were saying before, the Cardano project is broken down into 3 organizations. You have the Cardano Foundation, Emorgo, and IOHK. IOHK is concerned with engineering and building the Cardano blockchain up. They're not really necessarily interested, or I wouldn't say interested, but they're not supporting companies on their platform. We have Emorgo that is focused on doing that, and perhaps the Cardano Foundation in the future, we don't know. But I think that gives a Perfect response to that question. Moving on, the next Reddit question is from the username Marces1278, and that person asks, what would you do to avoid fraud within your business model? B2B financing has a big potential on credit losses. And the second question is, in which country would you like to offer it first? So I guess, how do you combat fraud?
Yes, great question. In terms of trade corridors, is Australia, Asia, Asia, Europe, and then always commodity-like goods. So fast-moving consumer goods are very good. Long trade relationships, and also most of the time the buyer is a multinational or in business for a couple of years. All of those indicators already help you to reduce fraud a lot. And then you have other systems such as you check for the bill of lading, you check how long is the company in place, you do KYC analysis between the counterparties. There are a lot of different ways to prevent fraud. But yeah, obviously it's a risk, but we have different measures in place.
All right, thank you, Tobias. The next question comes from Thurbeelan Black 13, Reddit user. And this person asks, will Traxia be listed on exchanges like Coinbase or Binance in 2019? So a speculative question. You can't have your feet held to the fire for questions like this. How would you like to respond to that? Listed on Coinbase or Binance?
Hopefully, yes.
Sounds good. Next question. Fintech321 asks, now this really good questions, lots from Fintech321. Can you give us some more insight about expected trading volumes for the next months and years? And when will the real trading on the secondary market start? Is the service fee percentage fixed? Which range is possible? Very in-depth questions, some of them a little bit speculative. How would you like to respond?
Yeah, to not be too speculative. It really depends what the market wants to buy and demands. So that will make that is the requirement for going ahead with and starting basically. Like at the moment, unfortunately, in Institute there seems to be very limited appetite for assets. Doesn't matter if invoice likes or others. There's limited appetite to buy them if they are solely represented on a blockchain, and therefore, yeah, we can't sell that product at the moment. So I don't know when that will change.
All right, thank you. And sometimes the answer is kind of like an I don't know. You know, when you ask question, when you have questions like that, and I don't know or we don't know yet is a perfectly good answer. There's nothing wrong with an answer like that because it is technically correct. Philippe, should we go to the next question from Fintech321? How are we doing on time?
Sounds good. We can get a couple more questions in. So the next question is, should Traxia investors be worried about LiqEase cash burn? Can LiqEase survive another 12 months bear market? And can LiqEase project, can LiqEase project investors know what the game plan will be for the next 12 months? I don't know. I think that question was already answered in the first half. You were saying that LiqEase is a private company and they're doing their own thing. They're not based, Traxia, while they did have, they do exist on the blockchain, LiqEase is doing their own thing and they have their own funding. So it's really independent of what the bear market is doing right now for LiqEase. As far as the game plan for the next 12 months, I don't know if you could get into that or answer how you would answer that.
Yes, of course there's a game plan. You, as LiqEase, as an independent or like a for-profit company, it's important to also have strong equity investors, which we are currently talking to, and then obviously go into making revenue, which we expect to happen in 2019. And I mentioned already like the focus in terms of different trade areas. So in a nutshell, that's the game plan.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Rick, do you want to get the next question?
Yes, sir. So from Fintech321, what is the expected invoice volume in 2019?
That's also quite speculative. We obviously have a target of volumes that we would love to process, and to give you a range, let's say over 30 million is the target. But if it's going to be lower, it's going to be lower. But that's our internal target.
That sounds good.
That sounds really good. As far the next question is from FinTech321. Why don't we see any liquidity on KuCoin since early 2019? Well, we are talking with the Traxia guys. They don't own the KuCoin exchange, so I don't know if they can answer that question. So that's maybe something that we need to do if we get the KuCoin people on this podcast. Why is there any added liquidity? No more market makers to provide liquidity. Will LiqEase buy TMT at KuCoin with such a lack of volume, or can we expect bigger exchanges to improve trading volume soon? Like Tobias was saying earlier, of course, if the TMT token would exist on other platforms or other exchanges, that would be great. And that's what you guys are looking forward to, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think you can answer to what KuCoin is doing.
Yeah, that's correct, unfortunately. Of course, we are in the same boat. The more liquidity, the better for us, the better for all token holders out there. There's only so much as we can do. We need to also look into the cost and return, obviously, of providing liquidity from our side versus investing into the operation and really into the purpose of the foundation, which is improve access to finance for our small medium enterprise. And we believe that this is the investment we should do because that is sustainable and has a good purpose.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll jump into the next question, and it's from FinTech321 also. And they ask, will we see more Traxia marketing in the future? It feels like the Traxia Foundation isn't focused on promoting the platform to crypto and blockchain investors anymore. Now, I'd like to comment on that. I follow the LiqEase and Traxia Twitter accounts, and they are marketing. They're very, very busy. That's what they're out there doing right now, but I'll let you guys speak to it. I personally think you would have to clone Bruno and Tobias and put them in other places on the planet for them to actually do more marketing. But what do you guys think? Will we see more Traxia marketing in the future?
Yes, we will definitely see more marketing in the future. I would like to mention that we are quite active on Traxia Twitter account, as well as the Telegram. Of course, we have newsletter, we have LinkedIn. We do share videos and also posts. I mean, there's a lot of content out there focused on the business model. And I think here is the important take, is that we see this as it's a real project of the real economy to solve a real problem. Therefore, we should be talking about the not that much of the crypto world or the blockchain world as concept, as what is in the future or the advantages of blockchain. We are over one step ahead of that, right? We are talking about the application of this to the day-to-day life, and I think that is a conversation that maybe the crypto enthusiasts are not as much interested as to know what other projects are out there, what kind of liquidity, what kind of exchanges, what is new in the crypto news. So I would recommend them to follow our accounts to see what we've been writing, the places where we've been promoting the company, because we are out there.
That sounds good. That sounds good. The last question from the Reddit users is from Daniela G, and she asks, what happens to the TMT fees which return? Do you sell them on the stock exchange to pay wages and infrastructure, etc.?
Well, on the stock exchange, for sure not, because this is not a stock. But yes, the model is in. Like, our revenue is the fee that we collect from the companies who want to upload invoices. This is our income. So to pay our expenses, we have to sell them, to sell that in the market. Now, we do not sell, and I saw that question asked before, the idea is not to sell when in a kind of, we have more information obviously being inside, right? So we cannot use that information to control the markets, and therefore we do sell when we see the necessary to pay the bills, but it's not going to be in the 30s of each month. So do not expect that kind of trying to guess when we're going to sell. Maybe there's quite a few months that we don't need to sell. Maybe we will sell a little bit every day. So it is. If the question is trying to understand the ups and downs of the market, don't try that.
I think that's a good response. Good response. Rick, we wrapped up these Reddit questions. I don't know if you had a couple outstanding questions. I know I had just like one question that I wanted to ask, but you can go ahead.
Okay, I do have one clear point. It is not a question, but I have a very clear point I need to make to all future ICOs. What Philippe and I do with the Cardano effect, prior to having these fine gentlemen from LiqEase come on our program, we had to establish a standard of excellence. We had to say, to have an ICO token on Cardano to come on the program, Traxia is a great model to follow. They have a use case, they have a business, they have a community, they are publicly well known, their names are public, and they have a really good reputation, and they're very good communicators. So let's say 6 months to a year from now, there are new ICOs occurring on the Cardano system after Plutus, Marlowe, and all the other features are released. We can't just bring any ICO on this program 6 months to a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 10 years from now. You have to meet some standard of excellence. And with Bruno and Tobias and what they've done with LiqEase and Traxia is a great model to look to say, can I get on the Cardano Effect podcast? And I just wanted to put that out there politely. That way, if there's 200 tokens or 400 tokens running on Cardano a couple years from now, there's going to be a lot of people wanting to come on the podcast, and we can't use this as a medium to sell tokens to the public. Okay, so just to make sure we're clear on that. Philippe, does that sound good?
That sounds perfect to me. You need to have a business model. Traxia obviously is a real business. They're going after a real use case, and that's extremely important. So any future ICOs that want to come on the Cardano Effect podcast, make sure that whatever you're working on, it has a use case and there's an actual business model behind it. You're just not burning money, or you just don't have any. You have to have direction. You just basically have to have direction. So I had one quick question. Because Cardano, one of their tenets behind Cardano is serving the unbanked. So Charles is constantly speaking about going to underdeveloped areas and bringing on these people or these small businesses into the new financial system and allowing them to communicate with the world in general. So moving forward, if Cardano is able to achieve its goals, will your company or will Traxia help to get the unbanked? Will they be able to participate? How small does the business have to be to participate within your system?
I think that's a great last question, and a very noble cause to bank the unbanked. We are already talking to institutes like the European Investment Fund, IFC, and others, always the intention to not only improve access to finance for small medium enterprises, but also for really, really small and unbanked one woman shops across the world who are trying to engage in business transactions. And for us, it always comes down to how fast can you or how can those standards be adopted, because for us it's about providing transparency, And because this transparency, if you can trust it, that allows you to price the underlying asset and risk. Yeah, so if this unbanked person or company is able to provide trusted information to the Cardano ecosystem, then that is obviously a great use case and value add for ourselves and for what we do and for the institutional investors that would like to have a sustainable actually improve the financial. We are very happy to support that cause.
Okay, that sounds good.
Philip,
that sounds...
I would like to add on Tobias' comment is that we are very interested, very focused on partnerships with all kinds of possible partners. So if there are companies out there that have a solution for delivering money or to businesses that need providing access, improving liquidity in markets that do not have it, let's have a talk. We can probably help, if not more than just sharing some contacts. We are very happy to do so. So we are committed to the mission of the foundation. It's to improve the access to financing. So very, very interested in that.
That sounds good. That sounds good. So I think this concludes the Cardano Effect podcast, episode 18. Rick, what do you think? Do you want me to close it out?
Yes, sir. And I would like to thank Tobias and Bruno for coming on the program. It's been a great pleasure to have you here, and you're welcome to come back. Just let us know. Philippe, go for it, sir.
Yes. So thank you to everyone. Thank you for the Reddit questions. There were a lot of questions within the community, and thank you for asking respectful questions. And please keep that format moving on. And Tobias and Bruno, you have the final words. Thank you for appearing on this podcast. We really appreciate you, and you are welcome back whenever. So the floor is yours, and then we'll close the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Philippe, Rick, for having us. We always appreciate the challenging questions from the community, and are happy to be participating in that kind of format. And great job. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us. It was a great pleasure. I would also like to thank the Cardano community overall, Cardano community, who has been a big supporter of our project. And without them, it would have been much harder. And so if there are any more questions or any comments or anything you think you need, just show up on our Telegram group, and I'll be there. Other team members will be there, and we'll happy to address those ones.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We'll make sure we link those down below. And until the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you.